Hey, how are you? I hope you're well. One of the things that I get to do as part of my purpose is to share a little bit of my faith, share a little bit of my spiritual insights every weekend while I'm here in Brazil and as I travel around the world. When I do, I get to share what we call the gospel. And if you're here in this channel, I hope this adds value to your life and I hope you get inspired by what we're about to say. I'm not trying to preach religion to you and I'm not trying to convince you of anything. All I'm trying to do is to share a little bit of my faith, and I hope it will inspire you. So let's go. Let's do this. This last Sunday, I had the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite topics. We spoke about discipleship. Now, you might not even know what discipleship means, but it simply means the process of following Jesus. And to me, at least, it seems like Jesus has spent more time trying to talk people out of following him than trying to convince people of following him. I don't know why, but I have this impression that he was very concerned, very worried with the expectations that people would hold of him. So, in his efforts to make sure that he laid down the expectations properly, he generally talked about the cost of discipleship. That's how he called it. And it's one of my favorite topics. I've preached about it many times, and this is what I want to share today. To me, 2,000 years later, 2,000 years after Jesus has been on earth, it seems like people leave church and people actually stop following Jesus, if that's even possible, for the same reason why they actually started. People stop following Jesus for the same reason they started. People leave church for the same reason they came in, and that is preference. Generally, today, people are coming in church or coming into church because of their preference. They go to this church or that church and they say, well, I like that church. I like the kids program. I like the way the pastor preaches. I like the way it's set up right here. We're in our church and we have a cool vibe over here. So people come in and they go, oh, I like it. I enjoyed it. I felt home. I felt good. And people come in and they come in for those reasons, their preference. They think they like the environment, the topics that were spoken about, and they leave for the same reason because at some point, someday, during their journey, they find another place, another environment, another pastor they like more, another message they like more. It's very common to hear people say, I'm going to go to a place where their conversation aligns more with my way of thinking. So people leave church for the same reason they came in, preference. The ideal would be that people would start following Jesus, not because of preference, but because of purpose. Purpose should be the defining factor why people are following Jesus. And this is why I believe Jesus was very clear with the expectations. So if you're on the verge of making a decision about following Jesus, maybe adopting some of his teachings, here are some of the expectations for you. Today, we're going to explore a little passage. It's only 3 verses in the Gospel of Luke. If you don't know, the Gospels are just the account of the life of Jesus. And in the book of Luke, the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, it's a huge chapter, 60-some verses. And there are a lot of things happening in Luke chapter 9. So many things. Obviously, they didn't happen all at once, but it's the account of things that happen through the course of a few days, maybe a few weeks. And this is how Luke records it. He records the feeding of the 5,000. If you've been in church for any amount of time, you probably heard someone preaching about the feeding of 5,000. 5,000 men, actually, probably around 20,000 people, with a few pieces of bread, a few loaves, and a few fish. The way it happens is Jesus asked the disciples, where are we going to buy food for all of these people? There are so many people following him. And they go like, well, we don't know. We're far away. We're in the middle of the desert. We're in the middle of nowhere. We don't know how we're going to feed these people. And then all of a sudden, the little boy comes in with 5 loaves and 2 fish. I think that's what it is. And Jesus said, have the people sitting in groups and I'm going to feed them. So Jesus breaks the bread, give thanks, and then starts distributing. And I mean, long story short, 12 baskets of bread are left over. It's an amazing story. I can talk about it another day. Luke talks about how Jesus predicted his death twice. Apparently, he did it 3 times, and his disciples saw it. The people that he's going to talk to in the verses that we're going to focus today, they heard him doing that. It is in chapter 9 that Jesus goes through what we call the transfiguration. Can you believe that? Jesus was sitting on the mountain, or Jesus was up on the mountain, and then all of a sudden, from heaven or from, I don't even know where they came from, 2 figures show up. And I mean, the account of Luke says that they were Elijah and Moses. Personally, I don't know how they figured that out, because back in the days, there was no Facebook, no Instagram, no photos. So I have no idea how they figured out that those 2 guys were Elijah and Moses. Maybe someone told them. But here comes Peter. What an amazing figure Peter is. Here comes Peter and says to, instead of going like, wow, we can see, someone representing the prophets, someone representing the law, and they're all bowing down to Jesus. That's amazing. Instead of going like in the state of awe, Peter comes to Jesus and said, ain't it good that we're here? Because we can build a tent for all of you guys. Like, we're amazing. We're the best. Peter was like, he was something else. He was some kind of trouble. And it is in chapter 9 that Jesus talks about picking up your cross daily, which is an expression that should bring fear into people, should make people tremble. The worst method of torture that was ever invented. It was probably invented by the Assyrians, perfected by the Romans. And there's so many ways someone could be crucified, and Jesus obviously suffered that death. And he was telling people, if you're going to follow me, you're going to have to pick up your cross daily. You're going to have to deny all of your possessions, everything that you have, everything that you are. And if you don't put me in the first place, man, you're in trouble. That's not how I want you to follow me. So all of these things happen in chapter 9. All of these people see what Jesus is talking about. And then when it comes to verse 57 to verse 62, which is what we want to explore, Jesus is trying to call people to follow him, I guess. And there are 3 kinds of people there, and this is what we're going to talk about. So the passage goes something like this. Someone comes to Jesus in the middle of the crowd and says, hey, Jesus, Rabbi, teacher, I'm going to follow you wherever you go. And Jesus goes like, what? Say what? No, you won't. And obviously Jesus knew his heart, but that's not explicit in the text. But Jesus turns to him and like, you know what? Foxes have holes. And we have no idea what, 2,000 years later, what Jesus is talking about when he's talking about foxes. But he turns to the guy and said, foxes have holes, but I don't have a place to sleep. I don't even know where I'm going. I don't even know where I'm going to be tomorrow. Meaning, it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. And honestly, you don't have what it takes. Basically, Jesus told this guy, you don't have what it takes. You're not able to follow me, because the first moment an obstacle will come, you're going to give up. If I can make any analogies for our days, 2,000 years later, I think there's a lot of people that decide to follow Jesus out of excitement. They come to church, they see this beautiful place, they like the songs, they enjoy the kids program, like I said in the beginning, and they go like, you know what, I'm in. We've been here for 6 years. And I've had so many people that came in and they said, oh, I'm in for the long haul. I want to do this with you guys. And 2 weeks later, they had disappeared. Like my daughter is playing with words these days, she would say, abracadabra, disappear. They disappear out of nothing, out of thin air, they're gone. Why? Because they didn't have what it takes. Now, I'm pretty sure that Jesus never spoke the way we speak. Jesus was much more polite. Jesus was certainly holy. But if Jesus was anything like us, if he would speak like us, and if he would have a temper like us, I think, forgive me for the words that I'm about to use, but I think he would have turned to this guy and he would have said, you know what? I ain't calling pussies, bro. You're not going to go. So don't even start. Just go home. And that would have offended some people back in the days and today. And I like to think that the call for salvation, the call for justification, the call to receive Jesus, the call to go into eternity, call it whatever you want. The call is universal. Anyone can have it. Anyone can put their hand up. Anyone can, quote unquote, accept Jesus in their heart. This is a wrong expression, but we can talk about it later. Like anyone can come to Jesus. The calling is for everyone, but serving is a different thing. Serving is not for everyone. Serving is only for the strong. Serving is only for the persistent. I like to think of the Navy SEALs. I don't know if you know what a Navy SEAL is, but it's an elite squad in the middle, an elite squad of the Navy. They're only called for special assignments. I like to describe this to our people as the Navy SEAL is the soldier who can hold his breath underwater for 5 minutes, not altering his cardiac rhythm while the shooting is going on the surface, waiting for the right moment to rise up and achieve the goal. That's a Navy SEAL. When everything is a turmoil, the Navy SEAL is calm. When everything is fast-paced, the Navy SEAL is analytical, but at the same time, on point. That's a Navy SEAL. I think Jesus would call Navy SEALs to his service. I think this is why, at the end of his ministry, when he went to heaven, believe it or not, his disciples couldn't accomplish much. So he decided to call the ultimate Navy SEAL, the guy who was persecuting the Christians. Jesus turns to him and said, "Hey, you, I have an appointment for you. I have an assignment for you." And then he calls Paul, and Paul is the guy who basically writes the majority of the New Testament. And what we have today of the Bible is basically the writings of Paul, especially in the New Testament. So I think Jesus would have called these people. And out of this passage, like I said, there are 3 groups of people. The first group of people are the weak, which I just described. The guys or the people who will put their hand up out of excitement, but they are weak. They're not persistent. They can't persevere. They're not built for the long haul. And again, I'm not talking about salvation here. The call, I believe, is for everyone. You don't have to feel embarrassed. You don't have to feel ashamed. You don't have to fear that Jesus is not going to call you if you're not strong. Matter of fact, it's the opposite. It is because we understand that we don't have enough strength in ourselves, that we rely upon the grace of God and the sacrifice that Jesus did for us. So it's totally the opposite. But serving, going on the mission, fulfilling the gospel mission, spreading the gospel, this incredible thing that we do, not only through preaching, but through our testimony, with our lives every day, that's a different deal. The first group is the weak. The second group of this whole thing is what I called the double-minded man. The double-minded man. If you continue to read from verse 57 to 62, the second part of the conversation, Jesus turns to the crowd, and maybe turns to a few people and said, you come and follow me. And then if you put together the accounts of Matthew and Luke, you're going to see people giving all sorts of excuses. You're going to see people saying, I just bought a piece of land, or I just got married. So they had excuses. In Luke, especially, this guy has a beautiful excuse. He says, "You know what, Jesus? I love the idea. I'm all in. But let me go back first and bury my father." Like, what does that mean? We don't understand what that means these days. It's kind of a weird thing. But if you could go back in time 2,000 years and understand the Judaic culture, if you could go back and try to understand that, you would understand that it was customary for the kids, especially the firstborn, to fulfill his family duties, and one of them was to bury their parents. Now, he could have been talking about the funeral and the mourning season. When someone died in your family, especially if it was your father and your mother, you would mourn for a whole year. There was a season for that, and they had to do it. And the reason why this is so complicated is because during the mourning, the mourning of the dead, they were considered impure, which means they couldn't go to the temple, they couldn't offer any sacrifice, and basically they couldn't receive forgiveness for their sins. So during that period, they were called impure, a whole year, some Jewish people would say. Or maybe he was talking about the fact that his father hadn't passed away yet. And because his father hadn't passed away yet, he would have to wait until he's dead to do the funeral, and then he could go, because he knew that Jesus would probably go far away and he wouldn't see his father. Like I said, there was no Facebook, no Instagram, no cell phone back in the day, so they couldn't communicate. And he would fail on his family duties. So that's rational. And the double-minded man is generally rational. He would present an excuse that's very rational. That it makes sense. You know, when people give excuses about not following Jesus, there's always a good excuse. You know, I was so tired. You know why I didn't come to church? Because I worked 6 days, and on the seventh day we're supposed to rest. You know, I didn't volunteer because I already do so many things, you know, like it always makes sense. But if you read the account of the Jesus brother James, he actually wrote a letter to the church, and he talks about this double-minded man in James chapter 1 verse 8. He talks about it, and he says, the double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Unstable in all his ways. It's like I know some people, and I won't mention any names, I don't want any troubles, but I know some people who are so unstable that they can't make a choice, they can't make a decision if they have two choices. Like, should I go right or should I go left? And because they're double-minded, because they lack their initiative, because they're not firm in their identity, they don't know what they're doing, they don't know their purpose, they don't know the cost of the discipleship that they're going through. They're always double-minded. They're always like, oh, I don't know, should I go right, should I go left? And they go, oh, I'm going to go left, but which way should you go? Oh, I'm going to go right. Oh, then I'm going to change. I'm going to go right. And these people are double-minded. They're divided. And the double-minded man can't follow Jesus because you have to make a decision, and you have to be straight at all times. It's like Paul actually says that I have decided to know Christ and Christ crucified and nothing else when I came among you. Like, he wasn't worried about all the problems that society would present. He wasn't worried about life. Matter of fact, he said, I consider my life nothing. That's what Paul says. I consider everything that I have gained nothing if I don't fulfill the mission that I was given. It's like Paul had a clear focus about his mission. Obviously, he had an amazing encounter, and most of us will never go through an encounter like Paul had. But he was firm. The double-minded man is never firm. When I was young, probably in the beginning of my journey, I met this old lady, and this old lady had an amazing story. She was serving every day in church, and she would lead the choir. I was part of a Baptist church, so you know, Baptists, they gotta have a choir. So she led the choir, she sang, and she preached, and she taught us on Bible school. Like, she did everything. So I had the chance to sit under her feet, basically under her feet. Like, she was sitting on the chair, she was old, and I sat down on the floor, me and a few other guys, and I asked her, what is the main regret you have in your journey? Like, what did you do that if you could go back in time, you wouldn't do it? And she told me with a tear in her eyes, she said, I regret not giving ear, not listening to my Lord when I was young. And I asked, what do you mean by that? And she said, oh, he had a calling for me. He had a clear mission. He spoke to me. He showed me. He was kind enough to show me. And I said no, because I had other obligations. She was 70-ish, and she could still remember. You know what? I don't want to be like that person. And obviously, she was a great example. She was leading, but that was just the surface, because deep inside, she was trying to overcompensate for not listening and not giving ear to God back in the days. Now, is that a reason to be disappointed and depressed? Obviously not. I don't understand the season you're in, and I have no intentions to try to guess what you're going through. Everyone is different. Everyone has their own goings of life. But the reality is that impacted me to the point that I made a decision back then that if Jesus had called me, I was going to go on the mission. I think that Jesus is kind of telling us, I have called you to a noble thing, a noble mission, like Nehemiah when he was building the wall. Like, Nehemiah is an old character in the Old Testament. He goes back to Jerusalem when the walls of the city were all broken, and there was a sign of weakness because any enemy could come and invade the city. So he asks for permission and goes back to try to rebuild the wall. That's his project, to bring dignity back to the city. And at some point, someone calls him and said, hey, the king wants to talk to you. And he says, you know what? I'm doing something very important. I can't go. If he wants to talk to me, tell him to come and talk to me right here. So that's a noble mission. That's a noble mission. And that's what Jesus has called us to do. There's an expression in our day-to-day, my wife uses this expression all the time. If I say, look, I want to buy this, it costs $1,000. And then she says, oh, why don't we go for this one that costs us $100? That's 10 times more. And I go like, well, but the $100 is cheap and it's going to break and we're going to have to replace it soon. And she goes like, oh, but the $1,000 is too expensive. You're not going to use it. You're probably going to drop it in 2 months. So how can we do this in a friendly way? And then she always uses that expression. She says, meet me in the middle. Let's do the 400 one. And you realize that my wife has a mathematical mind of her own. Like 400 is not in the middle. The middle is 500. But anyway, she's like, meet me in the middle. Let's do the 400 one. That is amazing for your relationship if you can do that with your wife and meet her in the middle and everyone's happy. But there is no everyone's happy with Jesus. There is no meet me in the middle. It's either yes or no. It's like a friend of mine used to say, it's double or nothing. Jesus doesn't want to meet you in the middle. Jesus wants your full commitment. That's what he wants. Double-minded people cannot follow Jesus. So we've got the weak people who says out of excitement, I want to follow you wherever you go. And Jesus goes like, you don't even know where I'm going. If only you knew that I'm heading to the cross, you'd have never said it. So you're not going. And then you've got the people that Jesus calls you, come and follow me. And they have the excuses. The double-minded people always have rational excuses. And last but not least, the third group, we have the doubtful people. You have the people who doubt, the people who are insecure. And on the verses that we're reading, Jesus says, no one who puts their hand to the plow and looks back is worthy to follow me. Or anyone, that's another translation, anyone who puts their hand on the plow and looks back is unfit for the kingdom of God. Now, again, another expression that 2,000 years later, we have no idea what it means. Do you know what a plow is? I had no idea. I had never seen a plow before. And honestly, I've never seen one personally. I had to Google it. So I went on Google and I found out what a plow is. A plow is a tool that a farmer uses to work the ground. So generally these days, there will be like 2 bulls or 2 horses on the front, and they're carrying this little trailer truck thing, and it's got daggers. So there's a dagger that comes over here, a dagger that comes over there, and then it just carves holes into the ground, and then at the same time, obviously, they improved it. They made it better. There's this little bucket that goes like throwing seeds on the holes that it carved on the ground. I think you get the picture. And Jesus says, if you put your hand on the plow and you look back, you're unfit for the kingdom of God. Let's talk about looking back first, and then I'm going to talk about being unfit. Like what he's trying to say is, if a farmer is focused on his work, and then imagine in our days, this guy is probably like working on the plow, and maybe he's got an iPhone right here in his hand, maybe on a little support thing, and then he's watching Netflix or whatever channel you want to do. Like he's watching basketball, and then all of a sudden he's so excited, and then he starts going to the right, and then he goes like, oh my gosh, I'm wrong. What does Jesus mean when he's trying to explain that? Is that if you do that, first of all, you run the risk of killing the other seeds that you had just sowed because you went on a different direction. Second, you get out of the way. Like this is the way. It's supposed to be a straight line. You get out of the way, and because you're getting out of the way, you're not actually using the best of your field. You're not maximizing the usage of your field. Jesus was trying to say that the distracted people, the doubtful people, the people who get distracted easily, they're not making the best use of the field that Jesus has given them. You're a farmer. I'm a farmer. We got the seeds of the gospel right here in our hands. It's the parable of the sower. A sower went out to sow seeds. And he sowed seeds on different grounds, and some of them actually gave fruit, and some of them died. Why? Because they had different grounds, and I can talk about it another day. But you're a farmer, I'm a farmer. We've been given seeds of the gospel to sow on the mission field. And if we're distracted, we don't make the best use of the mission field. We don't maximize our time, our skills, our abilities, our resources. We don't maximize the usage of the field. And we run the risk of killing all the seeds that maybe other people just threw on the ground. And then Jesus says, if you do that, you're not fit for the kingdom. And like I said in the beginning, Jesus is clearly not talking about salvation. Salvation is for everyone. Salvation is for anyone who confesses Jesus as the Lord and Savior. What Jesus is trying to say is, I have work to do. He said it once, like, the harvest is plentiful. So pray for laborers. Pray for the Lord of the harvest to send you laborers. The harvest is ready. The fields are ready. We just gotta go and do the work. So doing the work, that's a different subject. That's a different matter. And then he says, he's unfit for the kingdom of God, meaning he's unfit for the work. Now, being distracted can cost you a lot of things. Like, we're talking metaphorically here, and it can cost the field, it can cost the seeds. But if you're distracted in your life, it can cost your marriage. You know, if you've been married for 10, 20 years and then you get distracted with other women, maybe another man if you're a woman, and you get distracted, that could cost your marriage. Being distracted could cost your work. Jesus is calling people who don't get distracted easily. So today, what I wanted to share with you is there is a cost in following Jesus. And when Jesus calls people, we generally fall into these three categories. You're either weak, or you're double-minded with rational excuses, or you get easily distracted. And what Jesus is trying to say is, if you can focus on not being any of these, and if you just focus on me, pick up your cross, understand the mission, then you're fit for the work of the kingdom of God. How can that help you in your focus? Like, for me, we talk a lot about purpose in this channel, and my purpose of life is very much connected to the mission of spreading the good news of Jesus. Now, how about you? What is your purpose? What is your discipleship process? Where does Jesus come into the picture with you and your family and your life and your journey? Is it at work? Is it a family? Is it something that he's asked you to do and you know that he's asked you to do? It's very common these days to present a soft gospel. I wish I could present you a soft gospel, a gospel that doesn't require anything. We talk about grace, and people think that just because we talk about grace, we don't need to do anything. That's not quite right. So there's a saying in the word that says, everyone has a price. Everyone has a price. What's yours? If you have decided to follow Jesus, you know that song, I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. If you have decided to follow Jesus, what is your price? If anyone shows up with any kind of distraction or anything that puts you in doubt or anything that reveals your weakness, what is your price? Is it luxury? Is it possessions? Is it comfort in life, lifestyle? Is it a new position at work? What's your price? I'll give you a tip. When anyone asks you what's your price, or whenever you feel like the enemy is trying to present you a new offer with a higher price, you can answer like this: my price is being paid on the cross with the blood of my Savior. If you can focus on that and that alone, you will be like Paul. You won't be double-minded, you won't be weak, and you won't be distracted. You'll be like Paul. And I remember the last verse I want to share with you is in the book of Philippians. It's a letter that Paul writes to a church in a city called Philippi. There's so many people gathering there, and he writes this letter. And in chapter 3, after speaking about some beautiful things about Jesus' incarnation and all of that, chapter 3, he says, look, I don't consider that I myself have achieved this, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind. I look forward to fulfill the mission, to get to the target. I keep moving forwards until I get my crown. So you can mirror Paul, and you can be like Paul. Forget what lies behind. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter who you were. It doesn't matter if you consider yourself bad or good. It doesn't matter. What matters is if Jesus has called you now, the time is now. Don't present any excuses. Don't be doubtful. Don't be double-minded. Don't be distracted. Be like Paul. Forget what lies behind. Move forward to the goal. Now, I wish this has impacted you, inspired you. And if it did, please leave your comments. We like to think that this is our channel. So leave your comments below. Introduce yourself. Tell me who you are and how this message has impacted you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And I hope that with the time, these messages that we share get to inspire you even more and to put you in the right way of following Jesus. God bless.